Hey everyone, welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a story that is it's equal parts awe-inspiring and honestly a little terrifying. We're talking about a kid born on a tiny Massachusetts farm back in 1877 who somehow grows up to become literally the most feared name on Wall Street. But listen, this isn't just your standard biography. It's really the ultimate cautionary tale about human psychology, massive wealth, and the absolute fatal cost of losing your emotional discipline. We're going to see exactly how one man completely conquered the financial world only to be totally defeated by his own mind.
Okay, let's dive into this. There's a quote, "Skill makes money, discipline keeps it." And honestly, that is the entire foundation of what we're exploring today. You know, raw talent, high intelligence, having a brilliant eye for the market, those things can absolutely build you an empire, no doubt about it. But as we're about to see with our protagonist, if you don't have the emotional discipline to actually protect that empire, it's going to crumble. Period. It's a really profound realization, and it's exactly what separates a momentary winner from a lasting legend.
So, where did this whole legendary journey actually begin? Let's turn the clock back to the late 19th century. Part 1. The Boy Who Read Patterns. Born on a quiet farm in 1877, Jesse Livermore definitely did not stick around the agricultural fields for very long. At just 14 years old, he makes this incredibly bold decision to leave school and takes a job as a clerk in a Boston brokerage office. His actual job was pretty simple. He was what they called a chalk boy. Basically, his task was just writing the constantly changing stock prices up on this massive chalkboard. But here is the fascinating part. Jesse wasn't just mindlessly scribbling numbers. He was intensely watching them. He saw how specific stocks moved, exactly when they bounced, when they dropped. He was essentially reading the hidden mathematical patterns of the market in real time. And by age 15, he teams up with a buddy to place his very first trade. He starts with just a $5 investment, and by the end of that exact same day, he walks away with a profit of $3.12.
Now, that one little trade, that was the spark that just lit a roaring fire. Soon enough, his pattern recognition gets so incredibly sharp, so precise, that the local bucket shops, which, by the way, were basically just unregulated gambling houses for stocks back then, they actually banned him. Just think about that for a second. He was winning so consistently and draining so much of their money that they literally refused to let him walk through the front doors. The kid was just way too good for the house.
But look, the bucket shops were really just practice. To truly test his skills, Jesse knew he had to step into the real arena. Part 2, Shaking Up Wall Street.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the sheer scale of his impact during a time of absolute crisis. The year is 1907. There's this immense financial panic just spreading like wildfire across America. Major banks are collapsing left and right. People are terrified, rushing to pull whatever life savings they have out of the system. But while everyone else is completely paralyzed by fear, Jesse Livermore sees a crystal-clear opportunity. He aggressively short-sells the market, meaning he's betting heavily that stock prices are just going to keep crashing. And because of that one bold, highly calculated move based on the patterns he'd mastered, he makes a staggering $3 million in one single day.
His aggressive short selling was driving the market down so violently that it caught the attention of literally the most powerful man in American finance. The legendary banker J.P. Morgan himself actually sent a personal message directly to Livermore with a desperate request. He said, "Please do not drop the market any further." I mean, imagine being a 30-year-old independent trader and having the absolute titan of Wall Street begging you to stop trading simply because you are single-handedly sinking the entire American financial system. At that exact moment, he had the whole world right in the palm of his hand.
Let's move forward a bit, because incredibly, his biggest moment was still yet to come. Part 3, The Great Crash of 1929.
So by 1929, the entire world is caught up in this absolute financial euphoria. Everybody, from taxi drivers to bank presidents, mistakenly thought the stock market was just going to keep going up forever. But Jesse Livermore? He saw what everyone else completely missed. He saw the exhaustion in the market patterns. So he takes a massive, heavily leveraged short position right at the onset of what would eventually become the Great Depression. When the market violently crashes and wipes out millions of investors, Jesse nets a breathtaking $100 million. Adjusted for inflation, we are talking about billions of dollars today. It honestly still remains one of the greatest, most legendary single trades in the entire history of the stock market.
But right here, this is exactly where the narrative shifts, and we start to see the fatal flaw in his armor. Because despite his unquestionable genius, Jesse was trapped in this highly destructive internal cycle. On one side, you have his incredibly strict trading rules. right? Exercise immense patience, always follow the market trend, and keep human emotions completely out of the trade. But on the flip side, he was constantly battling these wild, impulsive emotions. In fact, earlier in his career, he had already lost an entire fortune in the cotton market simply because he completely abandoned his own rules and let his ego dictate his trades. He would build up these massive fortunes using his strict rules and then inevitably lose the whole shebang when his wild emotions took the wheel.
And that relentless internal battle leads us to the most heartbreaking chapter of this explainer. Part 4. The Tragic Fall.
After that legendary $100 million victory in 1929, something inside him just fundamentally broke, and it started this insanely rapid descent. First, he completely ignores his own strict discipline. Second, as new regulatory rules and totally different market conditions emerge in the 1930s, he stubbornly refuses to adapt. He starts making these wildly impulsive decisions and just rapidly hemorrhages his vast wealth. The man who had literally shaken Wall Street to its core suddenly couldn't even control his own impulses. And finally, the tragic fall was formalized when, in 1934, Jesse Livermore was forced to file for bankruptcy. The massive fortune was entirely gone.
The psychological toll of that catastrophic, entirely self-inflicted fall was too much for him to bear. In November of 1940, alone in a New York hotel room, Jesse Livermore tragically ended his own life. The suicide note he left behind for his family contained this devastatingly simple and profoundly sad sentence. It just said, "My life has been a failure." The man who had achieved the greatest financial victories in history ended his life feeling utterly and hopelessly defeated.
So the crucial point is this. The market didn't break him. He broke himself. The stock market, with all of its wild crashes, manipulated panics, and crazy volatile swings, none of that could defeat Jesse Livermore. What ultimately took him down was his own lack of discipline. It was his complete inability to conquer his internal emotional turmoil. He mastered the market for sure, but he never actually mastered his own mind. Now, you might be wondering, what does this century-old history lesson actually mean for us today? Well, let's bring it right into reality. Skill versus discipline in modern trading.
And this brilliantly illustrates why Livermore's story is so incredibly relevant right now. A 2023 CB report clearly shows that 9 out of 10 individual futures and options traders lose money. 90% are losing, only 10% are actually winning. A full century has passed since Livermore was in his prime. Today we've got advanced technology, high-speed algorithms, literally endless streams of data right on our phones, and yet, human psychology hasn't changed one single bit. People are still losing money for the exact same emotional reasons that Livermore did. If an absolute genius like Jesse Livermore, with all of his unparalleled skill and intuition, couldn't survive without emotional control, it just shows you how absolutely vital discipline is for anyone trying to navigate the markets today.
Which leaves us with a final, pretty provocative thought for you to consider today. What are you going to take away from this explainer? When you approach your own financial decisions, are you going to be able to harness the sheer skill and pattern recognition that built an empire, or are you going to fall victim to the emotional impulses that eventually destroyed it? We really want to hear from you on this one. Drop down into the comments below, type Livermore if you want to learn from his incredible market-shaking skills, or type Fall if you're choosing to learn from his fatal emotional mistakes. The choice between skill and discipline is entirely yours to make.